I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. My ears are wide open. My eyes are now open to see what I may be. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit, speak through me. I can hear the voices of all my kind. I'm listening, singing. I am listening, the tweeting and howling into the wind. My ears are wide open, and oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open, oh, the love to see and hear for you and me. Oh, I'm listening in this moment of silence. I am listening. I hear Spirit speak through me.
Please join me in the chalice lighting word. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
Good morning and welcome to our service. Settle into your space. Take a deep breath in. Let it out. Take a moment to let your soul ground itself into your being. Resmaa Menakem, in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, invites us into a practice for when we hear or learn uncomfortable things. We will ground ourselves in this practice this morning and return to it throughout our worship service. From your grounded place, I invite you to take a breath and let it out. Just settle, staring straight ahead. Let your body notice what it notices. Let your eyes, your senses notice what they notice. Acknowledge what is present for you. Are you bracing yourself for today's message? Are you irritated by the topic or my voice? Just notice. Now I want you to turn your head and look over your right shoulder and see if you can turn enough to engage your hips. And when you do, just notice what you see. Now turn back to center. Look up, look down, return to center. Now turn and look over your left shoulder, engaging the hips as you can, and notice what you see. Return to center. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Notice your body. Notice your breath. Let's begin. Our opening words are from Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift your eyes upon the day breaking for you. give birth again to the dream. Let us enter worship together by lifting our voices and spirits to sing our opening hymn, Wayoya, created by the choir of the UU Church of the Palouse.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Oh yeah, yeah.
Our time for all ages this morning comes from a resource on the Wenatchee Valley Museum website and is called The Legend of Saddle Rock. The Wenatchee tribe know the story as the legend of two bears. This version is adapted from a story told by Cecilia Ann Dick, daughter of the last Wenatchee chief, John Harmalt. Harmalt and his wife Ellen died when their Cashmere house caught in fire in 1937. Cecilia Ann passed on around 2000. Her sons William and Matthew Dick are among the last living members of the Wenatchee Band living on the Colville Reservation. Grizzly Bear was a disagreeable wife. She had a reputation of being grouchy and was prone to outbursts of anger. Black Bear, on the other hand, was hardworking and conscientious. She cooked good meals, took care of her children, and tended her duties at home. This earned her the respect of the husband the two bears shared in common. Grizzly Bear was very jealous of Black Bear. One morning, Black Bear needed to go dig some roots, so she set out from the hills above the river to Badger Mountain. She rose early, took off her digging pouch, and flung the belt across the river at Rock Island, forming a bridge that she could then cross. By the time Grizzly Bear finally caught up, Black Bear was on the other side with her belt back on her side. This made Grizzly Bear very mad, and in a temper, she tore up trees and brush before traveling downriver in search of another place to cross. Once on Badger Mountain, Grizzly Bear neglected her digging by spending the day spying on Black Bear, who went about her busyness of root digging. By day's end, Black Bear's basket was filled with delicious roots, but Grizzly had little to take home. Hurrying to get something in her basket, Grizzly broke what roots she dug up. When Grizzly Bear arrived home to feed her husband, he would not eat because the roots were so inferior. Black Bear took care in digging her roots, and upon returning home, she prepared them well. Their husband, of course, preferred Black Bear's roots. This infuriated Grizzly Bear all the more. Soon, she even began having thoughts that Black Bear must be more attractive to her husband. Such thinking only made Grizzly Bear all the madder at Black Bear, and the fighting continued. As time went on, the two bears' quarreling got worse. One day, Coyote grew tired of their ceaseless bickering and turned them into stone, which is where they stand today. This is the formation we know as Saddle Rock. The Wenatchee tribe knows it as the Two Bears. This morning, we will be learning and understanding about the history of the Wenatchee, or the Piscosa people, and what happened to the land they called home. We had hoped to have you hear from two leaders in the local Wenatchee tribe, Randy Lewis and Mary Big Bull Lewis. However, unfortunately, the recent fires severely affected the Colville Reservation, and they have been helping with recovery efforts there. Instead, we have been given permission by them and NCW Life to allow their voices to be heard through selections from a video produced. I will be including the full video as well as additional resources for you to learn more under our service links and in my minister's weekly message. Here are Randy Lewis and Mary Big Bull Lewis.
It is an uncomfortable situation to talk about, and the main thing that I want people to know is that nobody's blaming particular people for anything. They're just asking that you recognize that you're still benefiting from things that happened 200 years ago that should have changed already. So it's not calling out necessarily. That's the focus of Wenatchee Wear, is to bring people together, that people can represent and just share and be proud of where we are. We're in Wenatchee. It's named after the tribes. And I think modernization and colonization, a lot of that has happened over the years. And, the Wenatchee tribe spent many, many years, thousands of years along here and along the river and up along the Icicle. And right now, as we know, the little Bavarian village is not really known for having that rich Native American culture. But I think it just takes people to step up and step out and talk about it.
There's no changing history, what happened. But we can change that meaning. We can change the narrative, as they would say. It's not going to hurt you. It's painless. But let's right some of these wrongs. Let's correct the history. Correct the meaning of that history. Let's own the genesis of why these people were eliminated. We're not a different species. We're human beings. We have the same basic needs. We have the same basic wants. But the one thing that's been painfully removed is a people's ability to decide their future. It's the political powerlessness that Native people have been subjected to. It's when a people's history, a people's culture has been invalidated, that they cannot feel proud of who they are, starting as children. That conspires in your ability to make very solid and healthy decisions for your future, if you're even given that ability to decide your future. What's wrong with guilt? People should feel guilty. There's no changing history, what happened. But we can change that meaning.
Wenatchee people, or Piscosa, were a group of Native Americans originally living in the region near the confluence of the Columbia and Wenatchee rivers. Their history gets complicated around 1855 when there was confusion surrounding the Yakima Treaty. The treaty was supposed to establish the Wenatchee Reservation and fishing locations, but the federal government never recognized the boundaries of the agreement. The Wenatchee were encouraged to move to the Moses Columbia Reservation, but most filed for homesteads while waiting for their promised reservation to be formalized. Many were eventually forced to the Colville Reservation after being forced out by white settlers. Wenatchee Chief John Harmelt refused to sell the Wenatchee rights to a reservation and remained in the Wenatchee area until his tragic death in 1937. Another design that caught a little controversy is the Skookum design. A local icon easily spotted above the Office Depot off Wenatchee Avenue, Wenatchee Wear has a line of apparel inspired by the landmark.
People can see it as derogatory. But our focus is to share the actual history of it because it is an iconic piece of history here in the Wenatchee Valley. It's been here for over 100 years. Lots of people remember when they were kids, they would drive by and wait for it to wink. And
we were drawn by the image of Skookum, the Indian Skookum, with his eyes going this way. We didn't find him offensive. Matter of fact, there was so little of us. There was so little representation of Native Americans, of Wenatchees, of American Indians, anywhere, that for us, that was, we aren't dead. It really tears at you as a kid that you come from such an evil history. And my granddad, he just kind of, no, it's not how it was. So when we saw Skookum with his smile, his happy face, we would always run down there and, come on, take our picture. So they would take our picture with it.
So when we recreated it, I wanted it to be obviously our own design, and wanted to make it more feminine. So I softened the lines, I gave her eyelashes, I gave her actual braids. So we did a lot of different things with it, but it's still the iconic piece. So the piece was actually inspired by a non-Native woman in the early 1900s that created little dolls that looked like Native Americans. So she was inspired by the culture. She'd make these little dolls for kids to play with. And then in 1917, the fruit packaging company wanted to create a brand to kind of stand out amongst everybody else. And so it was actually an artist in the South that came up with the little Indian boy. And they had like a totem pole and a couple other, pretty generic, typical Native American art. And they decided to just keep the little Indian boy. And so that was made into their packaging to sell, and they still do use it. It's been sold through several different companies. And the actual word, Skookum, is Chinook jargon. So it's kind of a mishmash of several different things, but to me, I don't find it offensive, but to each their own, and I'm definitely don't try and force it on anybody. And if, the people that do love it, they see it as a positive, and that I have a lot of people asking, like, how should I feel about that? And I don't tell them how they should feel. I just explain the story to them and leave it up to them. That way they can decide. And it's very inspiring to see people's reactions to this, because when we launched, I had no idea how it was going to be received. It could have been totally negative or positive, and I didn't know how it was going to be taken. But we've gotten nothing but positive feedback, and people are very thankful for what we're doing because they respect the land and that they want to see change happen. So that's just been very humbling to be a part of that.
From hand-drawn designs to screen printing each piece locally in Chelan, Wenatchee Wear strives to continue to share the history of the Wenatchee tribe and the geological landmarks that surround us all in the Wenatchee community. You can find Wenatchee Wear products online at wenatcheewear.com or at Mulberry Manor in downtown Wenatchee. Randy Lewis says Marion Robb's modern spin on Native American art is a way of healing what's known as the sacred hoop.
Native people have always saw everything as a circle, the circle of life, the seasonal change. You call it we call it some people call it the circle of life, others call it the medicine wheel, the sacred hoop. Well, since the coming of Westerners, that hoop, little by little, it has been broken, it has been dismembered, piece taken out from residential school. Diseases and Jesus, as we say. Those all factored in to the destruction of the sacred hoop. It's been dismembered. But over the years, we've come together and we sit and we talk and we share. We remember lessons and history of the past. And as my mom would say, and it heals us. It heals our people to remember. And if you think about it, what is the opposite of dismember? Remembering. We're remembering that hoop. We're bringing it back together. We're putting back together those pieces.
Take a deep breath in. Let it out. Settle in. Stare straight ahead. Let your body notice what's around you. Let your senses notice what is around you. Acknowledge what is present for you right now. Just notice. Turn your head and look over your right shoulder, engaging your hips as you can. Notice what you see. Return to center. Look up. Look down. Look straight ahead. Turn and look over your left shoulder. Notice what you see. Return to center. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Notice your body. Notice your breath. Let's learn about the history of the Wenatchee people and their land. The resource I used for this history was mainly from the Western Legal History in the Journal of the 9th Judicial Circuit Historical Society, Volume 13, Number 2, from 2000. Thank you, Steve, for finding this resource. The story of the Wenatchee people, their land, and the U.S. government begins at the Walla Walla Treaty Council held by Governor Isaac Stevens, where numerous tribes gathered, including the Wenatchee. The result of this council was the 1855 Yakima Treaty. In this treaty, there was a specific article, Article 10, that pertained specifically to the Wenatchee tribe. It designated a 23,000 acre of land at the forks of the Wenatchee and Icicle Rivers and was labeled the Wenatchee-Pam Fishery Reserve. This was the location of one of the region's most abundant salmon fisheries. This fishery had been used by the Wenatchee tribe for centuries. After the treaty was signed, the Wenatchee people went back to living their lives in their villages in the designated area. They felt confident that the land was theirs and it was recognized by the government. When other tribes during this time fought against the government, the Wenatchee tribe remained peaceful and even helped Captain J.J. Archer and his troops during a battle. Captain Archer further acknowledged their rights to the land and even awarded them additional land to increase it to 39,000 acres. Although the Wenatchee tribe continued to be reassured of their land, the United States government did not follow through in surveying the land and removing it from the public domain. The Wenatchee lived along the river in peace for the next 2 decades. In 1870, white traders and missionaries came into the area. Tribe members were encouraged to convert to Catholicism, and even though many did, they also continued with their traditional native beliefs and customs. In 1878, a meeting at Priest Rapids with General O.O. Howard and leaders from the surrounding tribes, the Wenatchee were once again reassured about their land. However, the Wenatchee started encountering resistance to staying on their land, and they were reassured that with the passage of the 1875 Indian Homestead Act, that if they built a house, put up a fence, they would be able to remain on the land. This was later complicated by illegal fees and surveys, which made the homesteads the Wenatchee applied for null and void. In 1883 and 1884, white miners and settlers started entering the area, as well as interest from the Northern Pacific Railroad. In 1887, Special Agent George W. Gordon investigated the Wenatchee people's land rights and asked for a commission to determine the correct placement. Although repeated requests to have this done were made, the U.S. government never followed up. In 1887, Albert Bowman Rogers, a scout for the Northern Pacific Railroad, encountered the Wenatchee people and learned from them a route for the railroad to take, which would not interfere with the promised reservation to the Wenatchee tribe. It is the recommendation Rogers made to the engineers at the railroad. Unfortunately, the railroad engineers decided on a different route, which did take them through the promised reservation. The railroad submitted their map to the Secretary of Interior Noble, and because the land had not been removed from the public domain for the reservation, it was approved. In a last-ditch effort, an immediate request was made by Yakima Indian agent Jay Lynch to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs to have the land surveyed and marked under the provision of the treaty. Agent Lynch sent out Deputy Surveyor Oliver B. Iverson to mark the territory. Unfortunately, because of the election of a new president, Agent Lynch was replaced by Agent L.T. Irwin, who demanded Iverson stop his work and destroy any marked areas. Irwin then ordered Iverson to move the area 25 miles up the Wenatchee River and away from the Wenatchee-Pam fishery. Iverson, when he completed this new marking, wrote in his report, "Only a few salmon make it past the Tumwater Falls to go further up the Wenatchee River, and they are so battered up as to be unfit for food." It was then that Chief Harmelt sought out Agent Irwin to insist that the area be returned to the original location. Irwin went on to lie to the Wenatchee, telling them he had no control over where it was placed and that it had been finalized. In 1893, Irwin invited tribal members to a council which included the Wenatchee tribe and Chief Harmelt. During this council, Irwin misled the Wenatchee leaders, telling them they only had one choice, and that was the sale of their land. Then Irwin further misled them by saying that if they gave up their land, he would allot the Wenatchee each an allotment of 160 acres where they now lived. This meant between 14,000 and 28,000 acres of allotments. Chief Harmelt was pleased and left the council to take it back to the rest of the tribe. Unfortunately, Irwin called another council without inviting the Wenatchee and Chief Harmelt back. In this council, he convinced the Yakima tribe to cede the land of the Wenatchee, reassuring them that the Wenatchee would get their allotments of land. However, this did not happen. Irwin continued to create obstacles for the Wenatchee in their land use. And in ceding the land, the Yakima gained the fishing rights promised to the Wenatchee. Chief Harmelt continued to fight for the land and refused to leave it until he and his wife died in the house fire in 1937. At one point in the fight, Agent Irwin brought Chief Harmelt to a barn and tried to force him to take the $9.36 Irwin had determined was the value of the land. The Wenatchee continued to fight for their fishing rights and went to court several times, challenging Yakima's claim to them. Finally, in May 2010, the Ninth Circuit Court affirmed the decision to return the fishing rights to the Wenatchee. invite you to take a breath, let it out, and stare straight ahead. Let your body, your senses, notice what is around you. Acknowledge what is present for you. Just notice. Turn your head and look over your right shoulder, engaging your hips. Notice what you see. Turn back to center. Look up. Look down. Look straight ahead. Turn and look over your left shoulder, engaging your hips. Notice what you see. Return to center. Take a deep breath in. Let it out. Notice your body. Notice your breath. Let us learn what we can do about this situation. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe and understand we are interconnected with all of humanity and the natural world. We strive to uphold justice and equity in our communities. Now that we know this history of how the Wenatchee tribe was treated, we are affected, we are responsible, we are called. We are affected because the land that was taken is land we live on, benefit from, and worship on. We know through several sources of wisdom, land was and is sacred to the Native Americans. The land is very foundational to their spirituality, of their creation myths, and of their culture. When asked to move their land closer to Lake Wenatchee, where there are very little salmon, Chief Harmelt said this: "Does our great father at Washington think a salmon is an eagle that lives on top of the mountain? Or does he think a salmon is a deer that lives in the woods and hills? Or does he think a salmon is a mountain goat that lives among the rocks of the snow-covered mountains?" The Wenatchee have no current place to practice their sacred rituals, to tell their stories, or to practice their culture. Now that we know the history, we are responsible for learning from it. We have more information and understand the tragedy that happened. This is not a time to dwell in guilt or shame or say that wasn't me or my ancestors. Instead, it is a time to, as Maya Angelou reminded us in our opening words, learn from it and help to create a new dream. We are co-creators, and we have the ability to make efforts. We have resources and voices to help elevate, to educate, and to create this new dream. We are called by our faith, by our interconnectedness, by our own understanding of having a place of worship, to be partners with the current Wenatchee tribe leaders to help them gain back their land. There's a current effort that has been launched by Mary Big Bull Lewis to purchase land for the Wenatchee tribe to have a community center and trading post. As Mary Big Bull Lewis states on her Wenatchee Wear website, the community center will be for local indigenous peoples to have a safe place to gather, practice traditions, dance, meet, and more. The trading post will only carry authentic Native American art. This effort is our first Share the Plate organization for the current program year. Links to be able to contribute are on our website under this Sunday service information and will remain up until our next Share the Plates recipient in October. In addition to helping with their land, as I mentioned earlier, the Colville Reservation was one of the hardest hit areas from the recent fires. We can help with donations for fire recovery efforts. Right now, they are working on creating sustainable efforts. I will have listed with the land purchase effort the places to donate to help with the fire recovery. As Unitarian Universalists, we are affected, we are responsible, and we are called to live our principles of faith. Now that we know the history, let us be part in creating a new dream and a new beginning for the Wenatchee people. Take a deep breath in. Let it out. Stare straight ahead. Let your body, your senses notice what is around you. Just notice. Turn and look over your right shoulder, engaging your hips. Notice what you see. Turn back to center. Look up. Look down. Return to center. Turn and look over your left shoulder. Notice what you see. Return back to center. Take a deep breath in and out. Notice your body. Notice your breath. Let's pray. Our prayer is a Chinook blessing from the book Earth Prayers, edited by Elizabeth Roberts and Elias Amadon. There's a part for you to say. Teach us and show us the way. It will be on the screen, and when it is time to say it, I will lift my hands. Let us begin. We call upon the earth, our planet home, with its beautiful depths and soaring heights, its vitality and abundance of life, and together we ask that it teach us and show us the way. We call upon the mountains, the Cascades, and the Olympics, the high green valleys and meadows filled with wildflowers, the snows that never melt, the summits of intense silence, and we ask that they teach us and show us the way. We call upon the waters that rim the earth, horizon to horizon, that flow in our rivers and streams, that fall upon our gardens and fields, and we ask that they teach us and show us the way. We call upon the land which grows our food, the nurturing soil, the fertile fields, the abundant gardens and orchards, and we ask that they teach us and show us the way. We call upon the forests, the great trees reaching strong to the sky with earth in their roots and heavens in their branches, the fir and the pine and the cedar, and we ask them to teach us and show us the way. We call upon the creatures of the fields and forests and the seas, our brothers and sisters, the wolves, the deer, the eagle and dove, the great whales and the dolphins, the beautiful orca and salmon who share our Northwest home, and we ask them to teach us and show us the way. We call upon those who have lived on this earth, our ancestors and our friends who have dreamed the best future for generations, and upon those whose lives are built, and with thanksgiving we call upon them to teach us and show us the way. And lastly, we call upon that which we hold most sacred, the presence and the power of the great spirit of love and truth which flows through all the universe, to be with us, to teach us and show us the way. Amen. Please join in spirit and voice for our closing hymn, There is More Love Somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere.
Please join me in the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Now please raise your hands and spirits and join me in our closing song.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
I am finding my way, I am finding my way, I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way, I am finding my way, I am finding